What if I told you your semester is already decided by 8 a.m. before you've even opened a textbook? See, most students think failing happens during exams, but it actually happens quietly every single morning before school even starts. Your brain locks into a mode, focused or foggy, and it rides that mode all day. Today I'm breaking down the 8 a.m. rule that silently decides if you pass or fail this semester. And stay with me until the end, because the final rule is the one that decides whether the other seven even matter. Here's the part nobody tells you. You don't fail a test in the exam hall. You fail it in bed at 7:15 in the morning when you hit snooze for the third time. You fail it when you open your phone before your eyes even adjust to the light. Your brain doesn't wait for the exam to decide how it's going to perform. It decides hours earlier, based on tiny signals you send it before school starts. Most students never even notice this is happening. They just wake up, move through the motions, and blame the fog on being tired, or the subject being boring, or themselves for not being a morning person. Not because you're lazy, not because you don't care about your grades, but because nobody ever explained that mornings work like a switch, not a warm-up. Flip it wrong, and you spend the whole day trying to force focus that isn't there, feeling guilty every time your mind drifts in class. Flip it right, and focus just shows up, quiet and steady, without you begging for it. Think of it like plugging your phone into a charger that's secretly broken. The light shows it's charging, but an hour later you unplug it, and it's still at 2%, because the real damage was happening the whole time, invisibly, at the connection point nobody bothered to check. Without further delay, let's get into the rules. Rule number 1 is about the first 5 minutes after you open your eyes. Most students reach for their phone before they even sit up. They check messages, they check what happened online overnight, and they hand their attention away before the day has technically begun. Why? Because whatever you consume first thing in the morning becomes the lens for everything after it. Your brain is like wet cement in those first few minutes, and whatever gets pressed into it early sets the shape for hours. Not because you're weak-willed, but because nobody ever taught you that the first 5 minutes are sacred. The fix is almost embarrassingly simple. Keep your phone away from your bed. Give yourself 60 seconds of just lying there, breathing, before you touch anything. Nothing dramatic happens in that minute, but that's the point. You're training your brain to start the day on your terms, which is where confidence actually begins. Rule number 2 is about light. Most students wake up, keep the curtains shut, and stay in a dim room until it's time to leave. That feels comfortable, but it's quietly working against you. Your brain uses light as a signal to switch off sleep hormones and switch on alertness ones. No light, weak signal, foggy brain. That's why some students feel physically awake but mentally underwater for the first hour of school. The fix is simple. Open the curtains, step near a window, get actual daylight on your face within the first 10 minutes of waking up. It sounds too small to matter, but this is one of those habits where the size of the action has nothing to do with the size of the result. Which brings us to rule number 3, water. Most students go from a dry pillow to a dry mouth to a classroom without drinking anything for 10 or 12 hours. Then they wonder why their head feels heavy by second period, why the words on the page blur a little. Your brain is mostly water. Even mild dehydration slows down memory and focus, quietly, without you noticing the cause. It doesn't feel dramatic, it just feels like you're not a morning person. But often you're just thirsty. So drink a full glass of water before anything else, before coffee, before juice. It's small, but it's the difference between a brain that runs smooth and one that runs on static. Rule number 4 is about movement. Most students go from lying flat to sitting on the bed to sitting in a car or bus to sitting in a classroom chair. Hours of stillness back to back, then they expect their brain to feel sharp off of that. Movement increases blood flow, and blood flow carries oxygen to the parts of your brain responsible for focus and memory. Not because you're out of shape, but because your body was never built to think clearly while frozen in place for 4 hours straight. The fix isn't a workout, it's not 30 minutes. It's 2 or 3 minutes of stretching or walking around your room before you leave. Small movement, real signal, sharper brain. Now here's a question most students never ask themselves. Why do some people walk into first period completely locked in, while others are already mentally checked out before the bell even rings? It's not intelligence, it's not motivation. It's what happened between the alarm and the front door, and almost nobody's watching closely enough to notice. Rule number 5 is about decisions. Most students wake up and immediately start making choices: what to wear, what to eat, whether to reply to that text, whether to scroll for 5 more minutes. Every choice, even a tiny one, uses up a small amount of mental energy. And mental energy in the morning is limited, like a battery that hasn't charged all the way. Decide too much too early, and you've drained the battery you needed for actual focus later. Not because you lack discipline, but because nobody warned you that your willpower is a finite resource that runs out quietly, minute by minute. The fix is to remove decisions, not add willpower. Lay out your clothes the night before. Know what you're eating before you wake up. Fewer choices in the morning means more battery left for the classroom, where it actually counts. Rule number 6 is about noise, and I don't just mean sound. Most students fill the space between waking up and leaving with something: music, videos, group chats. It feels harmless, even comforting. But silence isn't boring to your brain, it's processing time. Skip it, and your brain walks into school still holding yesterday's clutter, still half-loading, still sorting through everything it absorbed the night before while trying to focus on something new. The fix is a stretch of quiet, even 5 or 10 minutes, where you're not consuming anything, just eating breakfast, just getting dressed, without a screen or a soundtrack. It feels strange at first, almost too quiet, but that's your brain finally getting a moment to reset instead of react. Rule number 7 is about intention, and this is where it starts to connect. Most students walk out the door thinking about lunch, or what happened last night, or nothing at all. Their mind is anywhere except where they're actually headed. Not because they don't care about school, but because nobody ever taught them that a mind without a target just drifts toward whatever's loudest. Elite performers, athletes, students who consistently do well all share one quiet habit. They name the target before they enter the moment. The fix is a 15-second mental preview before you walk into school. Just a thought like, today I'm focused in class. Today I finish my assignment before dinner. Naming the target gives your brain a direction to lock onto instead of drifting all morning, reacting to whatever shows up first. Which brings us to the final rule, rule number 8, the one that decides if the other 7 actually stick or if they quietly fall apart by Thursday. Most students think consistency means doing everything perfectly, every single day, no exceptions. So the first morning they miss one habit, they oversleep, they forget the water, they scroll before thinking. They decide the whole system is broken and give up completely. This is the quiet reason so many students start strong in September and are back to chaos by October. Not because the habits didn't work, but because one broken morning got treated as proof the whole thing failed. And that feeling of failure turns into frustration, and frustration turns into quitting. Here's what's actually true, and it's the part almost nobody tells you. Your brain doesn't need a perfect morning to build a new mode. It needs a repeated one. Small habits repeated every single day, most of the time, not every time. Miss one habit on one day, and that's not failure. That's just a normal Tuesday. What actually breaks the system isn't the missed alarm or the skipped glass of water. It's the belief that one bad morning erases every good one before it. That single belief, the all or nothing trap, does more damage to your semester than 100 missed mornings ever could, because it's the thing that convinces you to stop trusting yourself. Picture two students. Both miss their water habit on the same rainy Monday. One shrugs, drinks it late, moves on, back on track by Tuesday. The other decides the whole system already failed, so what's the point? And by Thursday, they've dropped every single habit, not just the one they missed. Same slip, completely different outcome. The difference wasn't discipline. It was which story they told themselves about one bad morning and whether they still trusted themselves enough to try again the next day. So rule number 8 is this: protect the pattern, not the perfection. If you only get the water and the light in one morning, that still counts as a win. If you skip the stretching but still do the 60 seconds of stillness before touching your phone, that still counts too. The goal was never a flawless streak. The goal is a pattern that survives contact with a bad day, because a bad day is coming whether you're ready for it or not. And what happens in the 5 minutes after you slip decides more about your semester than the slip itself ever will. Think about what's actually happening here. Your brain isn't judging you for one bad morning here or there. It's tallying the pattern over weeks. Miss one morning and it means almost nothing. Miss the pattern for a month, and suddenly you're the student wondering why everything feels so hard by finals. Why every class feels heavier than it should. Why material that used to make sense now slips through your fingers. That's the part that changes everything once you actually see it. You're not fighting your teachers or the material or bad luck when your grades slip. You're fighting a version of yourself that got built, quietly, morning after morning, by habits you never noticed you were choosing. And the good news is that the exact same quiet process that built the foggy version of you can build the focused one instead. It just needs the same ingredient: small habits repeated every single day. A year from now, you won't remember most of the individual mornings that got you there. You won't remember the exact Tuesday you drank water instead of scrolling, or the exact Thursday you opened the curtains instead of hiding under the blanket. But you'll notice the result: a student who walks into class already locked in, already ahead, calm and quietly confident, without needing to force it. You'll be proud of that student, not because they were perfect, but because they kept showing up. That's not talent. That's not luck. That's just what happens when small choices get repeated enough times that they stop being decisions and start being who you are. You don't need a perfect morning tomorrow. You just need one honest one, followed by another, until your brain stops asking whether to focus and just does it automatically. Until walking into first period locked in feels less like an achievement and more like just another normal Tuesday. And until trusting yourself again stops feeling like a stretch and starts feeling like the truth. If this helped you see your mornings differently, comment below and tell me which rule you're starting with tomorrow. And subscribe for more science-backed rules like this one.